Hi, I'm Wes Allen with DM Tales, and today I want to take a look at 5 indie TTRPGs that you might want to take a look at. Let's roll it. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting this channel. You make a lot of things possible, and if you would like to join in, check the description below. So why am I doing this? Well, Professor DM over on Dungeon Craft has asked that folks use July to be Independent TTRPG Month. And since that's pretty much my entire channel, I am only too happy to participate. And I've been on vacation for the last week, but I wanted to come back from my short hiatus to share with you these 5 games that I think are worth really taking a look at. But first, let's take a look at the criteria. So for all the games that made this list, I had to have at least read the core rulebook. I didn't have to do a review on them, but I needed to be that familiar with the game. And as it turns out, of the 5, I have indeed reviewed 4 of them on my site. I also determined that I was only going to choose 1 game per genre, and this made it really hard because there are some games I adore that I had to leave off the list, and I might actually do a second list just to give them a shout out as well. So it was pretty tough. I wanted to give a wide swath of games for folks to take a look at, and that was the way that I needed to do it. I also went with smaller publishers, so you're not going to see Free League or Monty Cook Games on here or Green Ronin. Now, I consider these to be independent game developers or game publishers because they are not owned by huge conglomerates, but it gets a little twitchy with some people, and I figured I'd go with the smaller ones for this list to give some of these folks the boost that they deserve for doing these incredible games that they put out, and that's why I chose them. I may, however, end up doing a video on the big game publishers, even though everyone is pretty much tiny compared to those Coastal Wizard folks. I'll do that in the future to make sure that they get shout-outs too, because they make some pretty cool stuff. So first up, I have Kids on Bikes, which is essentially Stranger Things, the role-playing game. It's got very simple mechanics. Every one of your attributes has a die type that's assigned to it, and these dice explode, and that helps you get to the challenge number that you have to beat in order to succeed at certain tasks. It's not about combat. It's a lot like the Stranger Things game. It's about survival and quick wits and investigating mysteries. Really cool stuff. The artwork of this game is absolutely phenomenal, and I would highly recommend picking it up just for that reason alone. The game itself is not my favorite. I have yet to play it or run it. I think in some respects, some of the narrative examples inside the core rulebook as they are right now tend to muddy the waters rather than make them more clear. But there is a second edition that has recently been kickstarted and hopefully will be for sale soon. In the meantime, if you want to pick up Kids on Bikes, you can go over to DriveThruRPG and pick up the PDF for $9.99. It's not a lot of money, and it's a game that's really worth checking out. I know a lot of folks really enjoy it. Next up is Avatar Legends, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game, which makes it narrative first. This is a game that has a lot of draw for people. You can play in any one of the World of Avatar's eras, and you might be tempted to think that because this game is based on a cartoon that it is a kid's game. If you think that, you need to think again. The opening of the core rulebook has an extended history of the Avatar world, and they are dealing with some deep and serious topics that invite a huge amount of opportunities for roleplay and confronting some serious issues inside the world and maybe learning something about ourselves along the way. The Avatar book itself is absolutely stunning to look at. I don't know if they've pulled stills from the actual cartoon or if it was just an artist that was emulating what was done in the cartoon, but it is absolutely stunning. Superior interior design and really well written. You can get this book at the Magpie Games website, and if you buy the hardcover and PDF combo, you can get both for just $49.99. If you want to buy the PDF only, you can get that at DriveThruRPG for $24.99. It's a good price for a great game. Lowlife 2090 is a magic punk game. It blends elements of sci-fi and fantasy and dystopian genres into one mix. It has a lot of commonalities with Shadowrun in that way. Has a neat historical background inside the book, cool interior design and layout, and some really neat features inside the game. You can do montages where it switches to this cinematic mode in order to achieve certain tasks for a job. Has really neat chase mechanics and a cool way of using the 6 key core attributes that everyone is familiar with. It is a roll under mechanic, so the attribute scores actually mean something, which is something I always appreciate. Lowlife 2090 also has perhaps my favorite initiative method in all of the TTRPGs that I have read up to this point. It is essentially an attribute check, and the level by which you pass or fail this is going to determine where you go inside initiative. Really, really neat. The artwork in Lowlife 2090 is phenomenal. It is clean, it is pretty to look at, and really the book itself is just a wonder to look at. If I were to play Lowlife 2090, I might make my characters more of a street level Robin Hood type, because I want to be more heroic with my campaigns instead of just hanging out with the seedy criminal element. But even with that, this is a fun game that has a lot going for it. If you want to pick it up right now, you can go to DriveThruRPG. A standard hardcover and PDF combo is going to cost you $49.95, although there is a more expensive premium hardback that you can get. And if you want to get it for PDF only, it is $14.95. This one is a lot of fun, and Pickpocket Press puts out some very good games. So if you grew up in the 80s and watched Saturday morning cartoons, you are probably familiar with Thundar the Barbarian. And if you did not grow up in the 80s and did not watch Saturday morning cartoons and are not familiar with this cartoon, go make yourself familiar with it. You're welcome. Thundar takes place in a far-flung future after a devastating apocalypse has ruined the earth, and it is being ruled by a bunch of evil sorcerers. And that is the setting for Barbarians of the Ruined Earth. It's essentially Thundar the TTRPG without violating any copyright. This is a cool game. It's got some incredible artwork inside that is gonzo and wild. The character classes are really off the wall. The Death Priest is one of my favorite, and the artwork for the Death Priest is actually rather hysterical. This is stuff that I really like. When I first read Barbarians of the Ruined Earth, I was like, I need to run this game. Like Lowlife 2090, it's a roll under mechanic for the 6 core attributes. And one of the nice things about Barbarians of the Ruined Earth is that as you level up, there is a chance for you to increase your attribute scores as you do so. Every time you achieve a new level, you roll a d20. If you exceed your current score, your attribute goes up by 1. So there's a chance by the time you get to higher levels that you are seriously powerful. And it's designed that way. The characters are designed to be these great, heroic, almost indestructible characters. But there's still a lot of thrills and wonder and things to discover inside the game that makes that, instead of not dramatic, actually increases the drama. Really cool. And you can pick this up for not that expensive. If you go over to DriveThruRPG, you can pick up the softcover and PDF combo for $30. And if you want to get the PDF only, it is only $15. It's not a very thick book, but there's a lot of content in it, and it is a well-designed interior. This is something you should check out and does not get enough shout-outs in the TTRPG space as far as I'm concerned. Basic Fantasy RPG is one of the first games of what became the OSR movement. It is very much a retro clone of older versions of the first commercially available tabletop role-playing game, but it does not emulate any one aspect of those rules. It's got a blend of the original rules and a basic and expert and of advanced, all kind of blended in together. And yet it also uses some nods for more modern techniques, like it uses ascending armor class instead of descending. Altogether, it is put together very, very well. And the cool thing about Basic Fantasy RPG is that it's not really a product. It is rather a project. It's a community of people who have come together in order to donate their time and their talents and their skills in order to create this really cool game. And if you have time or if you are inclined, you can go to the forums on basicfantasy.org and actually contribute your own efforts to this game to help make it better. Do some editing, add some supplements, create an adventure. These are all things that you can add into the game. Donate artwork. A lot of people have done that as well. So that's a really cool way of designing a game, and in fact, it is open source. You can download the actual word processing file from basicfantasy.org, minus the artwork that is licensed to Basic Fantasy itself, and then edit this book as you see fit to make it the game you want to play, and then add your own artwork if you want to fill in those gaps. It's a really cool concept, and there's no one else really doing this out there. Open Legend is an open source project, but it's much more on a limited scale. Basic Fantasy is done out in the open, and folks get to contribute in real time as they are able or as they desire. And because it's open source, you can actually download the game for free from the Basic Fantasy website. Everything is available as a PDF. Just download it, grab it, and go. In fact, on the back of the printed books, it tells you don't buy this book, at least not yet. The cool thing about it is that if you do want to buy a printed book, it is going to be printed as near to cost as is possible. So they're always going to be rather cheap. I think I got my last Basic Fantasy hardback for maybe $15 or just a little bit over that. And that's for an entire game. Nobody else is doing this out here. It's really cool. An example of Basic Fantasy role-playing games' strength as a community is their response to the recent OGL debacle back in January of 2023. The game was essentially put into jeopardy because if the Coastal Wizard people wanted to shut it down and they decided to pursue that, there wasn't much anyone was going to be able to do to stop it. And so the community came together under the banner of Chris Gonnerman, who is the author and creator of Basic Fantasy RPG, and they went through the entire 3rd edition book gangbusters. They cleaned up the language. They pulled out stuff that came from the 3.5 version of the standard reference document, and they cleaned up this game to put out the 4th edition in a matter of months, from January, and then it released, I think, in late April, early June, if memory serves. That's a really fast turnaround for a book of this size. And not only did they do the editing of the excising of this old text, they added a whole bunch of new things in. New monsters, more artwork, cleaned up descriptions of the different spells and some of the mechanics. Really cool stuff. And the only game mechanics they changed in this entire process are one way to deal with potential death of characters, and they halved the weight of coins. And that's it. So if you have 3rd edition books, you can still play. You're not going to skip a beat. You just say, okay, my coins are half weight and we're done. And off you go. This is a really well put together game. There are some things that I would change just a little bit, like putting cleric turn ability near the character class. It's just minor details and tweaks for my part. But if you are interested in any type of old school gaming and you haven't tried Basic Fantasy RPG, you have done yourself a disservice. Go to basicfantasy.org, download the PDF, and if you like that, go to Amazon, go to Lulu, go to DriveThruRPG, and pick up a print copy. It's really worth it. I have been running this game for 2 years, and I have had an absolute blast. So I am telling you, this is worth it. Certainly worth the buy-in cost, which is 0. So what's next up on my channel? Well, if you are paying attention over my shoulder, you can see that I have the new revised edition of Swords and Wizardry here in my house, and I have read that since I got back from vacation. In fact, I was considering doing a review of that until I reminded myself there's a reason why I was taking a hiatus. That's going to be my next review on the channel. After that, I've also got from Free League Press, thank you very much for the review copy of Symbaroum, which I'm about a third of the way through now, and this is a really cool game. I'm also still reading through Forbidden Lands and Scum and Villainy. Scum and Villainy is going to take a while. This is a game I'm having a hard time getting my head around, but I'm looking forward to getting into it and sharing my thoughts with all of you. This is going to be a fun summer. I have a ton going on, and I can't wait to bring it all to you. So, until we see each other again, folks, happy playing, everyone.